Hello there. I'm back here to make another video. And this may be one of my most controversial videos I've made, but I feel like I must comment on it because of the situation with the Nobel Peace Prize all of a sudden becoming worthless. I'm going to upset people who supports Israel. I'm also going to upset people who hates Israel because it's such a damn complex issue, and it is. Objectively speaking, it is a very complex issue. But let me start by saying that Israel basically signed a peace treaty with the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. Objectively, I'm going to say any two countries that sign a peace treaty with each other, thing. When countries are not at war with each other, that's a good thing. When there's goodwill, that's a good thing. So the peace treaty was signed September 15th, 2020. And David Trimble, who is, I guess he was, if he's still the first minister in Northern Ireland, I'm not sure, won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1998 for his role in bringing the Protestants and Catholics together to what was called the Good Friday Agreement that ended the conflict in Northern Ireland. And of course, I think objectively speaking, we can all agree that's a good thing. Since David Trimble won the Nobel Peace Prize, it qualifies him to nominate others as candidates for the Nobel Peace Prize. And it looks like that I'm going to try to get the names correct, and I apologize for the bad pronunciations. Crown Prince Abu Dhabi of the United Arab Emirates, and Abdul bin Rashid Al Zayani of Bahrain, and Benjamin Netenyahu of Israel are all candidates for the Nobel Peace Prize. All of a sudden, the Nobel Peace Prize became worthless. And Benjamin Netanyahu is largely the reason for that. Now, I do not know too much about Abu Dhabi of the United Arab Emirates. I do not know too much about Abdul bin Rashid Al Zayani of Bahrain. Don't know anything about their governance. I can only assume, like any other country in that region, that is not a democracy-friendly sort of place. Now, as I said, the problem really resides with Benjamin Netanyahu. And here is where it gets controversial when it comes to the politics of Israel. In my early political upbringing and you could say formative years as a socialist, I got fascinated with the idea of Israel being created as a socialist state, essentially. Labor Zionism. A lot of people don't know what labor Zionism or socialist Zionism is. And it's, for all intents and purposes, something of the past. But let me explain that Israel was created essentially as a socialist state. Jewish socialist Zionists came into Palestine, and they set up these camps called the kibbutz, and they helped create an infrastructure which actually helped Israel become a country and became a modern country, a modern society. Now, with the formation of what would become Israel, you had the socialist Zionists, the kibbutzniks, as they're kind of known, but you had they were largely left wing, secular, and wanted a homeland in Palestine for Jewish people to immigrate so they can escape anti-Semitism the world over. On the ideological opposite end were groups like what do they call the Irgun. Irgun was a right wing racist paramilitary outfit that wanted to create a theocratic homeland in Palestine, and they were Jewish supremacists that wanted to do that and have their state model after Mussolini of Italy. In fact, Irgun were very close with the Mussolini government during World War II. Luckily, the socialist Zionists won out, and Israel was created essentially as a socialist state. The Soviet Union were one of the early nations, but that was very short lived. And as tensions gotten worse over the years, partly Israel's fault, partly the other states in that region's fault for not recognizing Israel, and it was a big clusterfuck, and there's enough blame to go around. And because of the Holocaust, it's very understandable why there were people wanting to create this homeland. Looking back in hindsight, I think it would have been best if they would have bought land in a less controversial part of the world to form a new country. You know, maybe buy land in Argentina or buy land in Madagascar or someplace like that where there would where there would have not been that kind of negative tension, and the immigration could have taken place there. And I think that it would have been smoother than actually putting it in where Palestine is today, because it looked like there was some ethnic cleansing going on. And I don't mean that in its most extreme way. This is a very delicate subject. But getting back to Israel, um, Israel has some domestic progressive policies, such as universal health care. It is the safest place in the Middle East. It's the safest place to be LGBTQ. It's the only country that doesn't have a domestic death penalty. This sort of thing. But there are drawbacks to Israel, and the drawbacks to Israel is their treatment of the Palestinians, which is based on racism of sorts. It was their partnership with South Africa during the days of apartheid. It was their covert action that helped create Hamas to try to cause division within the PLO, which were largely secular and leftist. And that situation is why, you have to objectively look at Israel and say they may be internally democratic in some ways and everything, but there are some shitty aspects of the country. So I'm giving you kind of an objective view of the situation, whereby I know I'm going to have everybody angry with me for saying this, because the diehards on all sides, you can't have a rational conversation. I do not want the state to disappear, but I want them to behave. And if they don't behave, there's going to be a time when the country will disappear. And it's because of people like Benjamin Netenyahu, the Likud party, the religious parties there who are racist and they're against the Palestinians there, and they want to broaden the country. Also in the United States, not just the secular neocons in the United States, within both parties, but also evangelical Christians in the United States who are anti-Semitic, but they have this really perverse love of Israel, because they want Israel and a country like Iran to have a confrontation with each other and to toss nukes at each other. And so, you got this situation where where Israel has a bad government at the moment. Now, personally, I want the Likud government gone, and I want Labor, I want Meretz, I want the left to regain power in the country. That's not in the horizon anytime soon. So it's a clusterfuck. After the assassination, well, let me just state this. the two positions I find on Israel that's acceptable is support for the left within Israel is you must support Israel. You want Israel to be progressive. But if you oppose the state of Israel, that you want a peaceful resolve to the situation whereby there's no bloodshed and everything can be transitioned to a successor state to the state of Israel, whereby the Jewish and Palestinian population mutually recognize each other, and it's not one or the other, but sort of like a binational federation where everybody respects each other's and can live there in peace. Those are the two positions that are acceptable. What's not acceptable is the Christian right, evangelical Christians, pretend love for the Jewish people, whereby with their mindset, Israel it will be destroyed. What could be more anti-Semitic than that? Or that what exists on some of the really, really, what exists on some factions of the far left and in third world revolutionaries, whether they're religious or not, who hates Israel because it's a Jewish state. So if you love or you hate Israel, if you love Israel but hate the Jews, fuck off. If you are opposed to Israel because it's Jewish, fuck off. But if you favor peace, whether you're opposed to the state of Israel and you're not anti-Semitic, or you just want peace, whether Israel exists or not, and there's no loss of life on either side, that's okay. After the death of Rabin, Yitzhak Rabin in 1995, shortly afterwards, Simon Peres lost power and Benjamin Netenyahu came in. And all the progress that was being made back then between the Israelis and the Palestinians was put in serious decline. It got to the point where it was a short-lived government, thankfully, and Peres came back into power. But unfortunately, the peace process collapsed in the year 2000 to the point where the Israelis and the Palestinians are at odds with each other. This is where Benjamin Netenyahu comes in. He was prime minister for a short time. And because he was, and then he came back in the year 2009. But he was the minister of finance during the government of Ariel Sharon. What makes Netanyahu a son of a bitch, a piece of shit, a scumbag? If you want to call Israel a democratic state, he's probably the worst head of state in the democratic free world, if you want to call it that. This motherfucker urged George W. Bush and Dick Cheney to go into Iraq in 2002. Now, you think about what happened with the invasion of Iraq. The worst foreign policy blunder in U.S. history. It made the world less safe. It went after the wrong people when it came to 9/11, because Saddam Hussein might have been a piece of shit, but he did not cause 9/11. And also, Iraq was not a fundamentalist religious state when Saddam Hussein was their leader. Christians were not persecuted in Iraq under Saddam Hussein. Women had basically the same equality and status of women in the West. And all that went down the shitter when George W. Bush invaded Iraq in the year 2003. There were no weapons of mass destruction. There was no connection between Saddam Hussein and 9/11, because Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden were not one bit, close with each other. Well, let me tell you about Benjamin Netanyahu. He was born in Poland in 1949, where he was raised in Philadelphia most of his life. In 1967, he joined the IDF. He was in the military. He came back to the United States and studied at MIT. One thing that Bernie Sanders and Benjamin Netanyahu have in common is they're both what you will call practitioners of secular Judaism, which is a religious point of view of Judaism, which is secular and downplays the deity, the religious part of it, the theology. But getting back to what I was saying, Benjamin Netanyahu is the worst prime minister Israel's ever had. This guy, while I'm no fan of Barack Obama, he did everything he could to undermine Barack Obama in trying to create peace in the Middle East. And he was a monkey wrench. He spoke cannot think of the name of the man that was the Speaker of the House during the Obama years, the Republican Speaker of the House, but he made the arrangements for Benjamin Netanyahu to speak to, things was like in 2011, 2012, something like that. And this was by design to throw a monkey wrench into the peace treaty between Iran and the United States. If Benjamin Netanyahu does not want to do anything that's going to cause peace between Iran and the United States, my advice is to not listen to Benjamin Netanyahu. And that's the thing right there. This scumbag who was responsible for genocide in Gaza, no fan of Hamas, but to commit genocide in over there in Gaza is part of the problem while there's no peace over there. I make no apologies for what I'm saying. And the fact that he keeps getting reelected is very worrisome. It is indeed very worrisome. And the fact that he was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, I hope he does not get it. Because to me, Benjamin Netanyahu is no better than Osama bin Laden. He's no better than the people from Hamas. He's no better than the radical clerics in Iran. Benjamin Netanyahu is every bit as much of a problem in that region of the world, as well as the other people that the United States and the West have been fighting over these years. And that's what it comes down to. So, without any ado, without any apology, what do I got to say about Benjamin Netanyahu? Fuck Benjamin Netanyahu. Fuck you, Benjamin Netanyahu. Fuck you. Don't hate me, whatever y'all have to say on either side. If you like what you heard, press like and comment. If you hate it, comment anyway. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you that if you have a platform and you're passionate about something, utilize it. If you don't have a platform and you're passionate about something, create that platform, utilize it, because we're the muckrakers of our time. And most importantly, hit that subscribe button. And until next time, I am American Social Democracy. Peace. Bernie Sanders for president in the year 2024.